And welcome into a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast. I am your co-host Ryan Stern. Join with me as always, Derek Mountain. But I mean, for a week in early March, from the last week of February, there's a whole lot of football news that we got over the last 7 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like 3 or 4 days ago it was like, oh my God, like can free agency just please come? And then you're like, oh wait, it's a cap crunch. All these teams like they've been preparing for it for 9 months, 10 months. They've known about this, but we're seeing some of these big time guys hit the market now.
Yeah, and we're going to get into some of these the big news. We're also going to talk about the teams picking 13 through 19. Because we don't have to worry about Team 18 because we already talked about them with the Miami Dolphins, who are already at 3. And then we'll do another mock with the teams that we've covered so far. You can follow me on Twitter at rstern33. Derek is at Derek Mountain. We are brought to you by backsportspage.com. Make sure you're checking out backsportspage.com for all of the latest content that we have going up there. The amount of scouting reports and with the mock drafts that are coming, we have such a great team covering the NFL. So make sure you're checking out backsportspage.com. And I will be also tweeting out a lot of the articles. If you're following at Backsports page, you'll also get a glimpse of them there. All right. So, I mean, for like as I said, this was a really crazy week in the NFL, and it really started with an ultimate curveball, something that came out of nowhere. I mean, one of the biggest names, and usually when you have a name as big as J.J. Watt, you sort of have an idea of where he's going to end up, and you say, all right, we may not know it's going to be this team, but it's going to be either A, B, or C. The Arizona Cardinals were like J or Q. I mean, nobody had the Arizona Cardinals.
Literally no one.
But I guess blame Bill O'Brien.
I was going to say they're recreating Houston over there.
I haven't heard too much about it, but you have to feel that DeAndre Hopkins had a big part in the recruiting process of J.J. Watt to get him out there.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting fit for both sides. I mean, I think Watt took the money. He got $23 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
He's going to be 32 by the start of the regular season. He finally played a full season last year, but he's had his injury issues. So I think on Arizona's part, it's pretty risky, right? I mean, we're going to jump into them today, but not a ton of cap room, and they kind of ate all of it up with that. It was initially reported $31 million. I think it's really a $28 million deal. So it's a $14 million cap number for JJ Watt. That's like all their cap space right now. They're going to cut some guys, but I mean, it's interesting. Hassan Reddick, who just burst onto the scene last year, and he was so good for them last year. I mean, unless he's going to take a 1-year rental, maybe bet on himself for next year.
I don't even see how he fits into the scheme with Chandler Jones and JJ Watt.
I think you have the ability to move Watt inside now at 3 tech if you want. And Vance Joseph's really multiple. He'll change up between odd and even fronts. I think they're predominantly a 4-down team, but with Watt, he can kind of be that chess piece, move around. Chandler Jones is coming off an injury, so I don't know if we could count on him to be kind of the dude that we saw 2 years ago at 19 sacks. And I'm sure they'll ease him back into it a little bit. But, yeah, I was going to say maybe he's not even a piece of the puzzle anymore because they have a lot of other needs that they need to address.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you sort of think of the Arizona Cardinals as this big offensive, explosive team. They have a major need at wide receiver. They have a major need at running back. They have a major need at tight end, and they have needs along the offensive line.
I was going to say their line's not good. And their coach, in my opinion, I mean, for the offensive guru that we thought that Kingsbury was going to be, he needs to make a lot of adjustments next year. He was, I don't want to say he's figured out, he's pegged on, but like I mean, there are aspects of the air raid that are awesome. I think there's stuff that he runs that's great, but at points it gets stale. Like he needs to be a lot more diverse in the NFL. Like there just needs to be more from that collection group because they have a lot of talent there at certain spots, but I mean, against good defenses, they looked lost at points last year. They did not look good.
Yeah, so we have two really good Cleveland Browns writers with us at Back Sports Page, with Justin and Evan, and both of them posted on social media the exact same thing. They're like, if JJ Watt's going to get that sort of contract, I'm okay with the Browns passing on him.
Yeah. I mean, for that money, sign me up for like Carl Lawson, or maybe or who might go for less, and he's 25 or 26, or Romeo Okwara, right? I don't know. I mean, that's a risk because, as you just said, we'll get into it, but their offense has to be a lot better. Their defense was top 10 in EPA per play last year. It sounded like it was a pretty good defense last year. So offense had let them down constantly. And now you just strap yourself of any free agent moves you could really make. And now you're going to have to cut guys. You're going to have to maybe cut some good players.
Yeah, but you know what? That's going to be a trend throughout the league. And over the last 2 days, we started to see a couple pretty big names already get the axe. And one of them was awfully surprising down in Miami with them releasing Kyle Van Noy, who was their defensive captain last year, one of their key pieces to the turnaround of that Miami team. He was such an emotional leader coming over from New England. And I know he was really surprised. I don't know if you saw the statement that he had released.
I did.
But in a year where we're expecting a lot of players to be cut, for someone to be surprised that they're cut this year, you know that it really had to come out of nowhere.
He represents, like, he's the perfect Patriot, like Dolphin, for what Flores wants to do on defense. I mean, I'm just looking at his line last year: 69 combined tackles, 10 TFLs, 6 sacks, 6 batted balls, 2 forced fumbles, emotional leader, great culture guy. I mean, yeah, you save your $9.75 million against the cap and you just grow that number for Miami. That's great. But like, what he brings to the table for that locker room and that defense, that versatility he brings, I mean, it's kind of worth it. He was so good for them last year. It's just a really weird move.
Especially considering they're not one of the teams that's really cash strapped. They have well north of $30 million of cap space. It really made no sense, but I know we're going to get into our mock, and I have the even numbers this week, which means 18, and I can guarantee you that Jeremiah Owusu is not getting past number 18, because I mean he's just a perfect replacement if you think about it.
He really is. Yeah, I don't know. That one didn't sit right with me.
No,
and like we talk about the business of football, how harsh it is. He's been really productive the last 3 years. He was really productive in his 1 year in Miami. I think he's an easy candidate to re-sign with New England. They got all the cap space. They know what he is. But man, like he in the right defense, he's such a good player still. That's what we're gonna get though.
Yeah, and last year, yesterday it was not a good day for the Kyles. And I got above my shoulder the number 9 Notre Dame jersey for Kyle Rudolph, and unfortunately, it was also the number 9 was the number that Lewis Nix wore his senior year at Notre Dame. Unfortunate news this past week. His mother had reported him missing a couple days prior, and then his car was found in a pond. The crazy thing about it is that the pond was around the corner from a gas station that he had been shot during an attempted robbery just this past December. So it was just a crazy last couple months for Lewis Nix, who was really the backbone. And a lot of people look at that 2012 Notre Dame team, and of course that was the Manti Te'o team. Lewis Nix was the heart and soul of that team. Manti Te'o doesn't have the year that he has if Lewis Nix isn't demanding double, triple teams along the interior of the defensive line. and he always had a smile on his face. I know all the Notre Dame social media accounts were posting videos from there. There was one the spring game, the blue gold game, where he lined up on the 5-yard line as a touchdown and ran a QB draw, and all you see is the defenders bailing out of the way because you don't want to see 350 pounds coming charging at you down right up the middle. So prayers out to his family. It was 29 years old. Such a shame for a kid who really seemed to get the most out of life. But it's also Kyle Rudolph. And I think this one was a little bit more expected. They're going to be able to save about $10 million on the cap with the Minnesota Vikings with releasing Kyle Rudolph, who happened to be there in like 10 years, established himself as a prominent member in the community with the work that he did with the Children's Hospital there. But unfortunately, it's just the start of what we're really going to see a lot of probably over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been foreshadowing this for quite some time now, but it's like Rudolph is like the marquee guy, like the quintessential, like 30 to 32 years old, maybe upper 20s. You're kind of on the decline. You're still a good player, but it's like, I mean, you're dead weight to some of these teams in this new age of the salary cap decreasing. It hasn't happened in recent memory. So this is just how it has to be. Like some of these depth guys that they're great players. Like Rudolph's still a good tight end. He's going to be, He could start on a couple teams. He could be a really good second tight end on some other teams, depending on what role he wants. But for the Vikings, it's like, you know what? Like they have to have that money. Before that move, they were over the cap. So, and we saw with Gabe Jackson. We'll get into other guys, but it's just these are good football players that will be cut over the next couple of weeks before free agency.
Yeah, and I know we'll get into the Patriots a little, but Kyle Rudolph just sems like a quintessential Patriots free agent.
They had there are rumors of him getting traded there this deadline. They put $5 million on him. He's their starting tight end next year. You put Asiasi tight end too, and all of a sudden it's not a horrible tight end room. It's at least formidable, right? I see him. I thought of Seattle too. They've gone Jimmy Graham, Greg Olsen, Kyle Rudolph, just these declining good tight ends go to Seattle to die, I guess. I don't know. But I think New England's probably
trying to think if they had any more Notre Dame tight ends.
Oh yeah.
Olsen was
the U.
Yeah, so Olsen had actually committed to Notre Dame, and
that's right.
I actually my school we played against the Olsen brothers. They were Wayne Hills, Wayne, New Jersey. In 1 year we had to play against the Olsens and Chris Sims.
Oh, that was pretty fun.
Oh yeah,
he had a great day today on Twitter, Chris Sims.
Oh my goodness.
We should be mocking Kellen Mond tonight, right?
So friend of the show, John Laub, had tweeted out that the graphic of Sims's quarterback rankings in the draft, which has Zach Wilson at number 1 over Trevor Lawrence. And my response to him is that Chris Sims is a tabloid writer dressed up as an NFL analyst.
Well, it's weird because he was he's spot on Josh Allen. He's spot on Herbert. He loved Lamar in the draft process. Like he's been right with a lot of guys. He loved Derek Carr over what draft was that? Blake Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater and Johnny Manziel. So he's hit on some guys. Like he definitely has his knowledge, but like I was listening to his rationale today on Pro Football Talk just because I was curious. He had Mond at QB4 over Fields and Trey Lance, who are his fifth and sixth quarterbacks. He had Mac Jones at 3. So I'm listening to him and he's saying, Mac Jones has great footwork in the pocket. He thinks his game translates in certain systems, blah, blah, blah. I can buy that. But then for Fields, he goes, well, he had a lot of talent. It's like, all right, he can't have a lot of talent, and then you can't not say Mac Jones. It was just really, it was weird to me. But I mean, if you follow John Ledyard on, he's really good.
So yeah, I got to.
I was gonna say he said it perfectly about quarterbacks today. He was just like, everybody has their rankings, and that's great, but so much of it, especially quarterback, just it's scheme dependent, it's coach dependent, how they develop within the system. Like I think Josh Allen with Brian Dable and Sean McDermott's a perfect example. Yep. Kellen Mond. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, so much of it depends on the team that they go to, how they develop. A guy like Sam Darnold, who I still believe in his potential, but with Adam Gase and that offensive line and his weapons, like who's going to succeed there, right? So much of it is contingent on the team. And I mean, all of these rankings go out the window as soon as after April, after the draft, right? I mean, all of them start in square one, and they have to prove themselves anyway. So,
I mean, it literally was one of those head-scratching moments. He can't actually think that these are his rankings, right?
I mean, Wilson and Lawrence, like I'm not a huge Wilson guy, but I can at least see it, I guess, like in terms of his traits that can maybe translate to the NFL game. But like Mond over Fields and Lance, like what one aspect of his game does he even do better than those
Jones
guys?
At 3?
Yeah, it's just it's so weird. It's so weird.
And I know that a lot of it has to do with the fact that Mac Jones is in this draft class, but I don't know if you've heard both Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle were asked about Mac Jones versus Tua, and they both said Mac Jones.
Do you put stock in that? Because I don't.
I don't either. I think it's a question that a lot of writers have to ask because of the fact that they played with two guys who are going to be picked in the first round back-to-back years. But no, I don't put a lot of stock in it.
I was talking to one of my buddies today, and he said, and asked Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs who they would rather play for. They would say Tua. And that's, I mean, it's like they're sticking up for the guy that hasn't been picked yet and wasn't a top 5 pick with guaranteed money. I mean, the guy they just won a national championship with. I don't think it's like there's a lot of context missing when a reporter asks that, It's not like – so I don't put any stock into that.
The only stock I may put in is that I think if Miami decides to go wide receiver at number 3, Jamar Chase just solidified that.
I was gonna say Tua might not be too happy about those answers, but
all right. So we're gonna get into the off-season plan for teams picking numbers 13 through 19. Of course, we are going to skip number 18 because we already did the Miami Dolphins. So let's start at number 13, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers. So what's their stock look like right now?
So they have $23.8 million in cap space right now, and they got some juicy free agents coming up. They got Melvin Ingram, Hunter Henry, Denzel Perriman, Forrest Lamp, Sam Tevy, and Dan Feeney. So 3 offensive line starters, Hunter Henry, who's the top tight end on the market, and Melvin Ingram. That's a lot of guys. So, I mean, to me, I think this offseason is just all about building around Herbert. They obviously got to stay healthy between Derwin James, Joey Bosa. I mean, they just had awful luck over the past few years. Every single year, I want to talk myself into the Chargers, surprisingly, because they're always so talented. And I think they have the ingredients to take off. They're really good in a lot of premium positions. But they have to shore up the offensive line. That's a big question mark. And go from there. I mean, it was an interesting move not to hire a guy like Dable, an offensive coach, to mold with Herbert. I thought it was an interesting move to go with Staley, but I don't want to get carried away here, but I kind of like the aspect of maybe a Belichick-Brady thing with Herbert and Staley, where it's a defensive coach, but he has his hands in the offense and he has his hands on the quarterback and kind of how defenses are going to approach him. And Staley, who was a quarterback in college, he's familiar with the offensive game. So I think it could be awesome. I think the potential is through the roof. But yeah, I mean, I just don't want to see him ruin Herbert.
Yeah. So in terms of potential free agent candidates for them to bring in, obviously, if you're looking internally, I think their number one priority will probably be Hunter Henry.
Mm-hmm.
From outside, the name that really stuck out to me was someone who was just cut by the Raiders, and that's Gabe Jackson.
Yeah, that's an intriguing name. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they bring back Forrest Lamp. I don't know if they bring
No.
back Dan Feeney. They might on these 1-year flyers and maybe bring him competition through the draft or free agency. But they have to upgrade the offensive line. Trey Turner, if they were to cut him, they would save $11.5 million. I think that the more likely issue or the more likely proposition is they bring that number down. Maybe give him another year in his contract or work out a renegotiation and kind of give himself more room. I think they could also cut or trade Mike Williams. They could save $15.8 million if they were to cut or trade Mike Williams without any dead money hit. So yeah, I mean, I think they could bring in another receiver.
That's a big hit. There isn't a whole lot of depth behind the two of them,
No.
so you're going to have to fill
it's
that in.
Move because I do think a guy like Devonta Smith could fall to them in 14 or 13 in the right world. Or if they fall in love with someone like Rashad Bateman, I could see them doing that. I would prioritize offensive line just for Herbert's sake. And I think the free agent class with receivers is loaded. Maybe you make your move at a tier 2 guy like Curtis Samuel or a Marvin Jones maybe.
Yeah.
And fill that void because Keenan Allen's Keenan Allen. You have to worry about the durability stuff, but he's a stud. Gunning flash for them last year. He's their vertical threat. And then you have KJ Hill and Joe Reed from the draft last year. You hope one of them breaks through and you add another guy into that mix. But to me, I would definitely be aggressive in trying to trade Mike Williams and give me 15 more million on the cap.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get a receiver who's better for less money. Like, I think Curtis Samuel is almost a better fit for them in terms of how versatile he is for way less money.
I obviously think that would be a great thing for the Chargers, but then you have to find a team that's willing to take on Mike Williams plus the contract. So there you're looking at someone like the Jaguars, the Jets, maybe even the Colts.
Patriots have no receivers.
Yeah, the Patriots, teams that have a lot of cap room that would be able to be willing to take on the chance, because I think because of the contract that comes with it, you're not going to need to give up a whole lot.
But
in terms of draft compensation.
I give up a 6th-round pick to get Williams and sign a 3-year deal and bring his cap number from $15 million this year down to 10 or 8 and give him a 3-year deal if I love him. If I'm the Patriots, feel like that's a decent way to upgrade your wide receiver room instantaneously because through the draft, they've been just horrible at drafting receivers.
Yeah.
So I think that's a decent avenue for a team to go down if you do have that cap space, like you just said.
Yeah, and on the defensive side of the ball, obviously, if they're not going to re-sign Melvin Ingram, I know he's definitely looked like over the past 2 years he's on the decline. Maybe you look to bring in someone like a Jadeveon Clowney, and I know he's sort of on the same path that Melvin Ingram has been on, but maybe you can get Clowney at a cheaper number. Maybe even someone like Leonard Floyd or Bud Dupree.
I like Bud Dupree. I think he's a guy that people are forgetting about. I think guys like Ngakoue or even a Carl Lawson, they may be more inclined to getting a payday, but Bud Dupree's coming off the ACL tear, but he's so dynamic in both the run and pass game. He's a great complementary guy. We saw with TJ Watt. You put him with Joey Bosa, it's going to be the same kind of production. I would look there. I think they have to upgrade corner. Casey Hayward and Chris Harris are 2 good corners, but they're both on the decline too. They have big cap hits as well. I would be really aggressive in the corner market as well.
So I think that could potentially be a spot that they look to address early in the draft, because there's a decent chance that either Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain are there at 13. If not, there's always the J.C. Horn, which maybe you can even trade back a couple spots, pick up an extra pick or two, and go that way. If they decide to move on from Hunter Henry, and again, we've talked about the fact that we don't think Kyle Pitts is going to stay on the board very long, but he makes a ton of sense with the Chargers.
And Waddle. I like Jalen Waddle there. That explosion with Herbert, if he were to fall there, I think that could be special.
Yeah, so for the second week in a row, Mel Kiper came out and said that someone isn't going to get past the Giants at number 11. 2 weeks was it a week or so ago? It was Kyle Pitts isn't getting past the Giants at 11. This week, it's Jalen Waddle isn't getting past the Giants at 11. And then I still think that 13 is a little too early to take the next wide receiver. I think the next tier is really, really close to each other. You can get someone towards the end of the first round that's going to be very similar to someone that you can draft at 15, 16.
Or you just get Terrence Marshall in the second round, or Tylan Wallace in the second round. So one of those guys who are really good.
I keep seeing Terrace Marshall slipping into the first.
I mean, I think he's really good. I think he's really good.
I mean, 6'4", 200 pounds. Isn't going to wow you with great speed, but he's faster.
He's not slow.
He's faster than a lot of people that size.
I mean, he was on pace to 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns this year with not a great situation at quarterback in LSU. And I think it was 6 games before he opted out. But, I mean, he's got the makings of a low-end 1 or a high-end 2 to me physically.
Yeah, Michael Pittman. He reminds me a lot of how I felt about Michael Pittman last year. All right, so that is going to wrap it up for the Chargers. Next up at pick number 14 is a team that has some work to do. They already started again. We said with releasing Kyle Rudolph, the Minnesota Vikings. So what's their status right now?
So after the Kyle Rudolph release, they're still $5 million over the cap, which is
I saw 2.7.
I'm on over the cap. They got.
Okay. I was looking at Spotrac.
Okay. They're still over the cap, which is not great.
Oh yeah, right.
Up for free agencies, Anthony Harris, who they had tagged last year, Eric Wilson, and Todd Davis in their linebacking core. So they still have some work to do to cut guys.
Yeah, there's not a lot of big time salary that's coming off the books this year. It's going to have to be guys that are still under contract that are getting released.
And I fool myself with the Vikings, kind of like the Chargers. They've had more postseason success, but it's like, kind of, when do you blow it up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can fool yourself. You can fool yourself every year at the Vikings because they get back Michael Pierce in the interior. Their interior D-line was so bad last year, but they get back Pierce, who opted out. Daniil Hunter sat out last year. He had a herniated disc. He got surgery. They elected to not play him because why would you? So they get back Daniil Hunter. They get back Anthony Barr, who was out for the year last year. So there are 3 big pieces. But, also all of them are – besides Pierce, the 2 biggest guys, Barr and Hunter, coming back from injury. Their offense was really good last year, and they were still 7-9. It's just like, can we keep leaning on Dalvin Cook and expecting him to churn out these great years every single year? I don't know. It's just Zimmer doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that would blow it up. He's always going to want to be competitive, but I still think there are a ton of holes on this team. They even nailed the draft last year. They got Justin Jefferson, Cam Chancellor. They
were
nailed
the
draft last year.
They were my favorite draft class of all 32 last year.
Yeah, they nailed the draft last year, and they still still really rocky season for them last year. So I don't know. They kind of have to phase out this old team of guys like Rudolph, Anthony Harris. Harrison Smith he's kind of a cut candidate. I think it's more likely that they bring his number down and they give
Yeah.
and they negotiate a deal with him. Riley Reef, you can save $11.7 million if you cut him, but he had a really good year last year, and the tackle market is pretty scarce. After Trent Williams, it's not very good.
No, but that could also be a spot that they look to address in either the first or second round, whether it be a Rashawn Slater or Christian Darrisaw.
Definitely.
Or even one of the second round guys, maybe like an Alex Leatherwood, a Liam Eichenberg, was the kid from Michigan, Jalen Phillips,
Jalen
Jalen Mayfield. These are all guys that I think can start pretty early.
It's a lot to ask, though. Like, it's a lot to ask a guy to step in and start at left tackle if you're not a premier guy. Maybe you bump over Ryan O'Neal from right to left, but he's a really good right tackle. I probably wouldn't mess with that. I don't know. Like, if you take one at 13, you get Darrisaw, which is, he's probably the second best tackle for consensus, right? He's a really good player. Their D line is not good. It's a huge hole. It's something that they have to address. Their front seven in general, which was so bad last year, and it's something that Zimmer prides himself on. They have to get way better there. You just have to get way better there.
Yeah, so guys that you're looking at are Gregory Rousseau from Miami, Kwity Paye from Michigan. If you look to trade down, you can get Barmore from Alabama.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say I like Barmore there. I think that fit makes some sense. He's a great pass rusher from the interior. I think his lowest lows weren't great. He was definitely inconsistent. He's a risky pick in the first round, but his upside, how well he played in the playoffs. He's a game changer if he can play at that level.
Other names that even with free agency, someone like maybe a Kiki Short, who was just released by Carolina. Maybe even they look to bring back someone like an Everson Griffin. Griffin, I think, is beating himself up for ever leaving Minnesota. He has not had sustained success since he left. Stops in Detroit and Dallas, I believe, and even in the back end, someone like a Jason Verrett, who there's another veteran guy who may come at a discounted rate because he hasn't been able to stay on the field.
Yeah, I like the route of maybe taking a flyer on a guy like a Leonard Floyd, like the Rams did, like a first-round talent who hasn't panned out for $3-4 million. That seems like a decent investment, and you hope Danielle Hunter can elevate his game back to where it was, and maybe you find something there for a guy that could be complimentary. Floyd's going to go for a lot more money this year, but a guy like Griffin, a guy like Bruce Irvin maybe, or Marcus Golden, someone of that nature, but it's going to have to be a rotational guy. They don't have the resources to go after one of these guys.
All right, sitting at number 15, and
this is an interesting one.
This is a real interesting one because the Pats picking at number 15. Everyone was. This was such an awful year for the Patriots. They were 6-10 and near middle of the road.
7-9.
7-9, near middle of the road, and it felt like hell was freezing over, because of what was going on up there in New England. They've got a lot of space to work with too.
So I had to double take. It feels like 20 years ago, but you look at their season and it was such a weird year. They start out 2-1. They beat Miami and Vegas handily, and they lose to Seattle on the 1 yard line. So the first 3 games were like, all right, Belichick's working his magic again. Their defense is still pretty good. Cam Newton, they're getting the most out of him. They're maximizing him. And then boom, Cam Newton gets COVID the day before Kansas City. They lose that game, and where they played valiantly for 3 quarters, but They played with Brian Hoyer, so they lost that one, and then they lost 3 straight. They had their bye week. Cam Newton had some kind of COVID fog. It seemed like for a couple weeks. They get smoked by San Fran. They lose to Denver. They lose to Buffalo, fumbling on the last possession. And before you know it, they're 2-5. But out of the gate, it looked like they were going to be something, right? So yeah, I don't think it's the world and the reign of the Patriots is. I mean, I don't think they're a dynasty anymore. I think that they have to address quarterback. I still think they could be a viable team. I still think they could be a wild card team next year, but they have to address quarterback.
Right.
And 15 is a really weird spot for them. They're going to have to give up a king's ransom to move up and get one of the top 4 guys. So, I don't think that's in Belichick's nature to really do that. He doesn't really want to pay the quarterback top-tier money. Maybe they take a flyer on Marcus Mariota from Vegas, wait for him to get caught, or they trade a 7th rounder for him. Something like that. But besides that, I think Cam is kind of the best option for them to come back, run it back with him for year 2 and actually give him. I don't know.
You just made every single Patriots fan cringe.
Who was he throwing to last year? He's throwing to Demir Bird.
I get
Julian
it.
Edelman gets hurt. He was awful last year.
Just watching him throw the ball made you cringe.
No, I know.
Not necessarily because of who he was throwing the ball to, but he did not look like the Cam Newton of 2 years ago.
No, I do think the shoulder stuff has really caught up to him.
Yep.
I think his rushing floor has decreased a lot. You could see he was tearing it up the first couple weeks of the season. And then by the end of the year, he's getting 30, 40 yards a game. You can't really lean on him to do that stuff anymore. He's going to be 32 next year. So
right.
I don't know.
I have a name for you. I have a name for you.
Fitzpatrick. I knew it. Fitzpatrick. I actually think that's
complete the the AFC East cycle. It makes so much sense.
Yeah. It's a team. You could build them up in every other position, kind of punt at quarterback. You take a fun player like Fitzpatrick, who's going to keep you in games. He's going to lose you some games too, but he's exciting at least. They could go so many different ways. They have a decent chance to bounce back, though. They had 8 opt-outs last year.
Right.
3 of them being Hightower, Marcus Cannon, Patrick Chung, some good players for them, right? So front 7, Hightower coming back's big, but they still need to address that front 7. Specifically the edge and getting after the quarterback. Van Noy is a good answer, I think, potentially. It's looking like Joe Thuney's not going to come back unless they want to give him a franchise tag of $17 million. I don't see Belichick doing that. No. Jason McCourty's a free agent. James White's a free agent. David Andrews is a free agent. I think Andrews, they'd be well versed to bring him back.
Lawrence Guy,
Adam Butler. Yeah, these are replaceable guys. I think they could. It's on Belichick's nature, but I think they could splurge a little bit at a couple positions if they want. But I'm really curious to see what they do at 15. What do you think they should do?
Obviously, I think that a quarterback is going to be there because they're not expecting to be picking, and as crazy as it may seem, as low as 15 for the next couple of years, because it's in the Patriots' DNA to just think that you're going to be a playoff contender. So if that's in your sights, picking at 15 is going to be the closest that you can really go after one of those top quarterbacks. So obviously, I think they're outside of the range for a Trey Lance, a Justin Fields. They may have to trade up. Who knows how willing they are to trade even more assets? I think this is the year they don't have their second round draft pick because they traded it for Mohamed Sanu.
They don't have their third.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Was that the Mohamed? Not the. That was last year. Was that last year? The Mohamed Sanu.
Yeah, it was forfeited. I looked it up. Pick 77 got taken away from them. So I don't know what it was. I don't remember. It might have been something with COVID. But
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. But they have 15 and 46. Those are their only two picks in the top 100. So I mean, like if you trade up, like I don't know, like that's not a Belichick move, right?
No. Trading down is the Belichick move.
Yeah. So
So maybe they decide to go with uh someone like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, and maybe you trade down and with one of those picks, you bring in someone like a Kyle Trask, or what about Kellen Mond? He's the fourth best quarterback in in this class, so I think you're going to get great value out of that. But if they do decide to not go the quarterback route, obviously I think Mac Jones makes a ton of sense. I think he's one of the most ready to play quarterbacks of the guys in this year's class. So if they don't decide to go in the way of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, a Marcus Mariota, someone like a Mac Jones, if he's there, and I think he should be there, is an interesting option. If they don't decide to go quarterback, the name that I think fits is Micah Parsons, the
yeah,
linebacker from Penn State. Uh, he's a Kyle Van Noy. He's a Teddy Bruschi.
I was gonna say,
He's
yeah.
one of those guys who's gonna be able to take over the lead of a defense.
Well, you get him, Chase Winovich, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Kyle Duggar. Like those are some real young pieces right there. There's some real good young pieces you could build around. I would love that pick if he were to fall in Belichick's lap at 15. You could put him at will. You could put him at edge. He's kind of that chess piece you can move around. I want to see them spend a receiver. I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah,
who's necessarily going to.
Rashad Bateman makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, Bateman makes sense. To me, I mean, we'll see what receivers end up on the market. We talk about all these guys, but they end up getting tagged anyway. Like I think Godwin's a decent candidate to get tagged. Allen Robinson is a lead candidate to get tagged. Galladay even might get tagged.
I
A
keep
guy that,
hearing Allen Robinson in a tag and trade situation.
I mean, you know what you're getting out of Robinson, but if you're the Patriots, I want to keep all my picks. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I don't want to give the Bears a second and pay him. I mean, that's instead. I would. I mean, I don't love him, but I think he's gotten a lot of flack. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is a great fit for
Yeah.
them in terms of what he brings in the blocking game. He's a great middle of the field receiver. He's tough. He does the little things really well. I think he could maybe his attitude wouldn't. I don't think he has bad attitude either, but what he
Yeah,
did
but
with Pittsburgh last year,
they also signed Antonio Brown, so it's not like
yeah,
they haven't gone in the
yeah,
direction of the quote unquote Belichick guy.
and I don't think he. I mean, he has an enthusiasm for the game. I mean, I just think it could rub some people off the wrong way. But
Really young too.
yeah, you bring him in for 15, 16 million of your 60 million in cap space for a 25-year-old receiver. I mean, why not, right? I mean, I don't think that would be a terrible move for them at all. And maybe you bring other guys in, you bring 1 year flyers on. I mean, you find your version of Nelson Aguilar like the Raiders did last year. I mean, a guy that I like, Rashad Higgins, could go for cheap. A Josh Reynolds, maybe guys of that nature. And then maybe you take another flyer in the draft in the third, fourth round, like an Elijah Moore, if he falls in the second or third, maybe someone like that. It's such a deep class. But the Patriots, they have to upgrade their playmakers. They have nothing on the outside. Like if you go with Mac Jones in the first round, a guy who thrives off anticipation throws, getting the ball out quick. You can't throw out Demir Bird next year and
Yeah.
these receivers that don't separate and Gunnar Olszewski. I mean, you can't do it. So they just, I mean, they have to find a way to revamp that receiver room.
Oh, I mean, and that also is probably, I mean, as big of a need as a quarterback is for them. wide receivers right up there.
It's the worst. It's the worst core in the league by far.
It's so amazing that a team that has had so much success, especially in the mid to late rounds, at every other position, has not been able to do
They've been
anything at
so
the
bad
wide
at
receiver.
receiver. They don't even like none of them
Since
are even good. They're all like bad. They're all bad picks.
yeah, uh, ever said was Edelman? He was a UDFA, right?
He's
Edelman,
seventh round. He's
the
a seventh
seventh round,
rounder. Yeah, I
and I mean
mean,
it
he's a
even took
quarterback in
him
college,
right, and it even took him a couple years to develop.
and he
Uh,
was Wes Welker's kind of
right,
understudy.
right.
And the only guys that should be back, in my opinion, are Jacoby Myers and I guess Edelman. But to me, like if I could get Juju in the slot, like I'm taking him over Edelman, and I'm still giving Edelman his 30-40% of snaps a game. But he isn't a
What do they
viable
do?
slot to me anymore.
What do they do with N'Keal Harry? They invested so much draft capital into
Oh
him,
my
and he
god.
just has not been able to do anything.
I mean, I liked Harry out of college, but not first round seemed a little
Yeah,
rich.
yeah.
And he's a guy that he thrived off contested catches, and he can't separate. From the outside, he can't. I mean, maybe you move him as an inside receiver, as a big slot, but even that, it's like to me, it's a sunk cost. I guess you have to bring him back because he's a first round pick, but like he's gotten a lot of opportunity,
You
and it
know
does
what?
not look good.
You know what N'Keal Harry sort of feels like? It sort of feels like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah,
That you reached at the end of the first round for somebody who
flashy pick.
right, a flashy pick that you thought was the right move for your system, and not necessarily the best player at that position, because no one in their right mind had Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the top of their running back boards last year.
Yeah.
He just sort of felt like the right pick for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that's what the Patriots fell trap.
Him, Josh Doxson, who else? Like they just whiffed on so many guys. Like it's honestly impressive. Aaron Dobson,
Yeah.
who like never dropped a pass at Oregon, and then gets to New England and drops everything. Like, yeah. It's the one position Belichick has not figured out.
All right, sitting there at number 16 is the Arizona Cardinals, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time because we spend a lot of time at the beginning talking about with the J.J. Watt thing, but they still have a little bit of wiggle room. Obviously, there are going to be more cuts to be made, but they've got some pretty impressive names that are free agents.
Yeah, Patrick Peterson's gone. Larry Fitzgerald's a free agent. Kenyon Drake, Marcus Golden, Hassan Reddick.
Yep.
It's a lot. All of them contribute.
Those were the exact 5 that I wrote down.
Yeah, those are all contributors. I mean, Patrick Peterson didn't have a good year last year, but I mean, you dip your feet into the corner market. I don't know if you're going to do much better considering how tight they are. Offensive line is still an issue. I mean, you talked about it. You're going to try to bring in another weapon, you assume, for Kyler. I don't know. Like, Watt just felt like a move they didn't have to make. And I think the idea of Watt and Jones on paper is a lot better than what it could be on the field at this point. Both in their 30s.
Too much has to go right.
Yeah, both have durability issues. I mean, to me, I think they would have been well versed to use that money over 3 or 4 free agents. Take some flyers because they got a lot of holes. I mean, they still have. I mean, we went through all the positions. I mean, the offense, they have to address the offense. It was below average last year, significantly below average last year. If you were to tell me that this is where the Cardinals would be between Kingsbury and Kyler Murray at this point in their tenure together, I would have told you that's a huge disappointment. I mean, they should be way further along at this point. So I don't know what they do at this point. I guess you look O-line at 16, right? But
yeah, that's definitely in the cards. Um, maybe even someone like a J.C. Horn to
Yeah.
replace Patrick Peterson. You could look at a Rashad Bateman, a Kadarius Toney. But I think in free agency, two names that really stick out at wide receiver that I think can outperform what I think they're going to get paid this year is Nelson Aguilar and T.Y. Hilton. I know the Raiders have said that they want Nelson Aguilar back. I'm not sure if that actually happens. But T.Y. Hilton is the Colts already told him that they're not going to re-sign him. I think he's going to come cheap, and I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. So I think that's an interesting fit. And then back to the draft. I wouldn't even be surprised if you see a Najee Harris or Travis Etienne there.
Yeah, those are intriguing names. If you're going receiver, I think they need speed. You have DeAndre Hopkins. I was going to say you have DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk. And Kirk, I mean, he had a lot of big plays last year, but you bring a guy that could take the top off the defense and kind of open up their intermediate game for Kyler. I mean, looking through the free agency list, you could do, I don't even know, DeAnthony Thomas. No, Isaiah McKenzie flashed last year. You could get a bigger role in Arizona, but I mean, you take a flyer on one of these guys for $1 or $2 million, and a John Ross even I think would be a decent option as your fourth receiver. You give him 15, 20 snaps a game, but they have to get creative because they really strain themselves by signing Watt at $14 million.
You're only going to need to give him $15, $20 to sign.
I was going to say he's going to get the vet minimum wherever he goes.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, they're going to have to get creative. It's going to have to be like Aguilar signing with Vegas last year for $1 million. It's going to have to be one of those kinds of things at a couple different positions, I think.
And speaking of getting creative, and speaking about Las Vegas, sitting there at number 17 is the Las Vegas Raiders. Tell me how creative they need to be.
I really don't like what they're doing. So before they cut Gabe Jackson today, they were $7 million over the cap. Cutting Jackson saves them $9.6 million, so they're back underneath the cap. They floated around the rumor that they might be shopping Trent Brown, who would save $14 million. And I mean, Mariota's gone one way or another.
So that'll save
$11 million.
I was going to say a little over 10.
It was a monster deal for a backup. That was an interesting deal by Mike Mayock and John Gruden. But like, where are the Raiders? Like, are they rebuilding? Are they trying to win now? I can't tell you because, like, Gabe Jackson wasn't great, but you're probably not going to find a guard that is going to match his production where they are at this point.
Yeah, I think LaMarcus Joyner is going to be gone too.
He's been a huge disappointment for them.
Yeah. In free agency, again, they're going to have to try and be get a little sneaky, or they're going to have to figure out ways to make things happen. And maybe you see if they end up losing someone like a Nelson Aguilar, maybe you see someone like an AJ Green come in.
Tyrell Williams got cut.
Yeah, and he actually signed with Detroit today.
Yeah.
And he's now the number one receiver.
He's the only receiver. Him and Quintez Cephas are like the only ones there.
Yeah. So maybe you see like an AJ Green coming to Vegas, someone like a T.Y. Hilton. They're going to have to get one of those
David Moore
older guys that are not going to cost a whole lot. The one name that, because they need so much help in the secondary, especially at safety, if they're able to move on from Trent Brown, open up that cap space, I think the name that makes the most sense is Anthony Harris.
Anthony Harris would be intriguing. I mean, bringing in Gus Bradley, it's going to be a lot of single high looks, so they're going to have to get comfortable with the middle of the field roamer. That hypothetically is LaMarcus Joyner. But as you said, I think he's an obvious cut candidate. He's been a huge disappointment for them. mean, maybe John Johnson from the Rams. I
Yep.
like some at the $8 to $10 million range. Marcus May from the Jets, I really like. And he kind of did it all with the Jets, especially since Jamal Adams left. They put him in the slot a lot. They pressured him a lot. He's an interesting player. But like, I'm looking at the Raiders. They cut Gabe Jackson. If they move on from Trent Brown, you're going to turn a strength into potentially a weakness.
Yeah.
Because you're counting on Richie Incognito, who was out all of last season. He's been really good since he's been there, but he's getting up there.
But again,
that was the one strength you could lean on. Derek Carr.
This is a draft that you can replace those, and I know you're not going to replace the level.
Their defense was so bad last year. It was so. I mean, every single level, it was horrible. I mean, the Cleveland Farrell pick is already looking like a disaster. I mean, at the time it did, and it still is. He has 6.5 sacks in 28 games or whatever it is. Crosby's a decent player. Can't be your number one edge. He can't.
No.
The second level, Corey Littleton has not looked like a very good free agent signing. Another guy. Nick Gutowski, another guy. The back end we talked about, it's a lot of young guys. Arnett was out most of last season. I kind of like him, but again, looked like a reach at 19. Might be a little rich. Trayvon Mullen has flash, but if you can't get pressure, it's going to make these young corners and young guys in the secondary look really bad, and that's what's happening in Vegas. Jonathan Abram, they drafted a safety in 2020 that can't cover. They just haven't drafted well. They've had a ton of draft capital, have missed on a ton of guys.
In all fairness, the Seattle Seahawks just traded 2 first-round draft picks for a safety who can't cover.
Yeah, they a defensive end that plays safety. So, like, I mean, to me, at 17, I think you go best player available on defense. They just need a lot of new life there. They really do.
Yeah, names that you're looking at are going to be Micah Parsons, Jeremiah Wosu-Koromoa, Gregory Rousseau, Kwity Paye. Those are probably going to be the guys that you're looking at. Potentially a J.C. Horn, but I think that the front 7 is where they need the most help.
I was going to say I like Trayvon Moehrig from TCU there, but like, again, that's kind of what they've been doing, kind of loading up on these young guys in the secondary and leaving them out dry without any pressure. Like, it's what you said. They need a lot of juice up front.
Yep. All right. And wrapping it up, number 19 is the Washington football team. And I mean, we didn't even get around to this. The shocking news to me that they're moving on from Alex Smith, and what we're hearing now is that they didn't even want any part of Alex Smith in the locker room last year. I mean, after all that he went through to get back to playing shape for your football team, the fact that they really didn't want him to be a part of the team was very Dan Snyder-esque.
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak to that because it seemed like Rivera liked him at least a little bit. I mean, he wasn't shy when he threw him in against the LA Rams once Kyle Allen went down and everyone was nervous.
Yeah, let's put him in against Aaron Donald. In his first snaps in 2 years after almost losing a leg.
Yeah, I mean, and he went 5-1 in his starts in the regular season. So like, he played good ball for them last year. He has a ton of limitations, and by the end of the year, I mean, it was kind of tough to watch him, just how immobile he is at this point. But I think he'll be a great backup or a great 3 for another team and a great addition to the QB room. But it seemed like they had to do it. He's a $23 million cap number. You see $14.7 million cutting him, and now they're over $50 million in cap space. So like, overnight, now they're like a top 5 team in cap space. So they could be really aggressive in certain spots if they want to be.
Yeah, and look at some of these. They've got a bunch of intriguing names that are free agents of their own.
Yeah, so they have Brandon Scherf, who they just have to bring back, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kerrigan's gone.
It's not a good offensive line, and he was their best offensive lineman.
Yeah. Kerrigan's gone. I mean, he logged like 35% of the snaps. He's going to go somewhere else and get a starting role. I mean, he's a good football player still.
Didn't he become the franchise leader in sacks? Like the history of the franchise?
He might have. I saw a crazy stat. Since he's entered the league in 2011, he has like the third most quarterback hits. I mean, he's sneaky. He had such a good career.
Yeah. Well, I mean, half of them have been against the Giants, so that's what you get for playing against that offensive line for so many years.
And then Ronald Darby is a free agent, who was good for them last year. He was a nice piece for them last year.
That he was. I think the biggest need for them, to me, is wide receiver, and I think with the amount of cap space that they have, they'll be in play for one of those top names should they not be tagged, an Allen Robinson, a Kenny Golladay, a Chris Godwin. If those three end up getting tagged, I think they go after someone like a Corey Davis or Curtis Samuel.
I was going to say, I think Corey Davis complements Terry McLaurin's twitchiness really well.
Yeah.
This big-bodied, like, all-around receiver. He's a nice piece. They need to address left tackle, and the one juicy guy that everyone will have their eyes on, they really won't, because he had a lot of issues with Washington, and that is Trent Williams. The next best guy.
That's not happening.
I was going to say the next best guy, maybe a Cam Robinson, someone of that nature. But I think they're definitely in play for a tackle at 19. Yeah. One of those guys.
Yeah, Darisaw. I don't see any way Slater falls that far, but even someone like a Leatherwood or a Dylan Raduns from
Tevin Jenkins, I like a lot at Oklahoma State. Yeah. He might not be a left tackle. I think he's probably more of a right tackle. But I love his game too. They have to address left tackle. You got to bring back Brandon Scherf. I mean, they haven't been able to negotiate a deal now. You tag him. I think it's a $14 million hit. You eat that. That's fine. He's one of the best guards in football. But yeah, what do you do with quarterback? What do you think their plan is?
So to me, the name that makes the most sense is Mac Jones. I think that the skill set that he brings is, I mean, I see a lot of Alex Smith in him in a Mac Jones.
Yeah.
I think that it fits. If they look to go the free agent route, again, maybe it's a Ryan Fitzpatrick. That it's a spot that he hasn't played in yet, so it's another check off the box for Ryan Fitzpatrick as he tries to play for all 32 teams before he retires, or even maybe even someone like a Cam Newton.
Yeah, a potential reunion with Rivera. I think Andy Dalton would be a decent backup. Yeah. I would be tempted to roll with Heineke off what I saw in the playoff game, and I know it's a one-game sample size, but against that Tampa Bay defense, he looked as good as any quarterback did in the playoffs. I mean, and he knows the Scott Turner offense from his days in Carolina and now in Washington. Heineke's well-versed there. So, I mean, I'll be tempted to do it just because he can create out of structure, like Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins. Like, I would just want to break away against that mold of kind of just a pocket passer, just to me. So I'm intrigued by Heineke. He's a cheap option. I think they signed him for $8.5 million for 2 years. I don't know. He brings some excitement, brings some juice. We'll see. Obviously, you got to give him some competition, but I would not reach for a quarterback. I would not force a quarterback at 19 unless they love a guy like Mac Jones. I just think there are other holes that they need to fill on this roster before they worry about quarterback.
All right, let's get into mock draft time. So we're gonna do the let's do the top 19. So last week I had the odds, you had the evens. We'll switch it up this week, so you can start us off.
No surprises here. I am going with Trevor Lawrence. No Zach Wilson today from me.
I mean, but he's number one on Chris Sims's board. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess I bad pick there for me. I don't know.
so I'm actually going to make a trade.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
Yeah. So the Jets, I think that if it were me, I think they're going to stick with Sam Darnold. And if
Wow. Did you see what
and
Douglas said
yeah,
today?
yes, I know. I heard that that he's taking calls on Sam. Um, I think that's to also drive up the price on the pick, because I think if teams call about Sam Darnold, he's going to say, well, maybe if the asking price for Darnold is too much, what about number two instead? Um, so I'm actually going to make a trade down to number 8. The Carolina
Ooh,
Panthers are going to give up their number 1, their number 2, next year's number 1 and number 2.
wow.
Yeah.
They seem. I
Uh,
mean, we talked about last week. They seem like the most likely to trade up for sure.
yeah. And they're going to trade up, and they're going to take Zach Wilson, quarterback at BYU.
Alrighty. I mean, I wanted to trade down with you with my Miami pick, but whatever. I guess I'm forced to pick. So, I mean, I know you went with Chase last week. To me, I'm just going to go with Sewell. I think the drop off in tackles is more palpable than wide receiver. I think I could get a really good wide receiver at 18, or I could dip my feet in the free agent pool if I want at receiver. So I'll go with Penny Sewell at number 3.
Do you think that there's a chance that Cincy wants to tries to trade up just so they
Five to
can
three.
they can secure him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a luxury pick, obviously, but for Miami, like they went Austin Jackson and Robert Hunt last year. I think Hunt's more of a guard, but
Guard, yeah.
he played pretty well tackle last year, all things considered. For Cincy, they kind of have to end up with Penny Sewell. Just you can't they can't not completely revamp that offensive line. And with Penei Sewell just like right there, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I think Miami should definitely trade out of number 3. I mean, I think you can agree
Yeah.
with that. I think they
Yeah.
should definitely trade out of 3. They don't really, there's no one there that really screams like they're the third guy and it's a
Right.
great fit for Miami.
So at number 4, uh, it's crazy because the Atlanta Falcons are sitting here at number 4, and they don't have a ton of glaring needs, especially on the offense. I definitely think this is way too early for a defensive pick. So I'm just going to take the quarterback of the future, take the Georgia boy. Justin Fields comes off the
Alrighty.
board, number 4 to the Atlanta Falcons.
I'm gonna make a trade with myself. I'm gonna trade with Denver. Denver's gonna climb up from 9 to 5. They are gonna give up their first this year, first next year to climb up and get Trey Lance at
Okay.
number 5. I think he is gonna beat out Drew Lock. Maybe he sits out for a couple games, but Trey Lance is their guy. They make an aggressive move since he moves down to number 9.
Yeah, I think if they're not able to secure Sewell at number 5, trading down makes a ton of sense, so that they can fit more into the other offensive tackle range.
Exactly.
All right, I am now here at number 6, and as much as this sickens me, the Philadelphia Eagles have their choice of wide receivers, and they're going to take Jamar Chase out of LSU.
Alrighty. I'm at number 7 with the Lions. I mean, we talked about it. Tyrell Williams is my number 1 right now. So I'm going to go with Waddle. He's my wide receiver 1 in this class. I think he's going to bring a lot of juice to them, a lot of speed, explosion. Hopefully, make things a little easier on Goff. I'll go with Waddle.
All right, so now I'm sitting here with the Jets. They need help at the wide receiver spot, but I think that this may be. I think they may end up being a little bit more okay with their wide receivers than a lot of people actually think they are. What they really need is someone out of the tight end spot. Chris Herndon has been a great disappointment, and Kyle Pitts makes a ton of sense here at number 8 for the Jets.
I like it. Okay, so 9 is Cincy, who traded back, and I'm going Rashawn Slater. Picked up another first rounder in the process. I get my second offensive tackle, and Slater in the top 10.
So what do you do? Do you have Slater play at left and kick Jonah Williams over to the right? Because Jonah Williams is a good left tackle. I think he's an elite right tackle.
Yeah, and I think Slater does have more of a profile for a left tackle.
Left, yeah.
And I mean, he thrived at Northwestern. He shut down big time edges, including Chase Young last season in the Big Ten. So yeah, I'm probably going to move Jonah to the right side and put Slater at the blind side for Joe Burrow.
All right, so now I'm here at number 10 with the Cowboys. We're finally going to see a defensive player come off the board. I think that Micah Parsons he seems like a Cowboy, but I think that the secondary is a much bigger need. So I think Caleb Farley really fits the Cowboys there at number 10.
Alrighty, and I got your Giants. They just moved on from Golden Tate today. They need to revamp that wide receiver room. I don't love it, but I'm going with Devonta Smith at 11.
Oh, so you're going anti? You're making Mel Kiper look like a fool. And I mean, Mel Kiper's never looked like a fool because
Jimmy Clausen.
Jimmy Clausen's a guaranteed star in the league.
Exactly.
I can see Devonta Smith as the pick. I do think that Waddle is more the Giants would be looking for, but I think Smith is the name right now. And I think a lot the same way that they went after Saquon Barkley because he was the name. Right now it's Devonta Smith. All right, so I am here at number 12 with the San Francisco 49ers, and there's a lot of speculation that Jimmy Garoppolo may have played his last game in San Fran. It would not surprise me to hear if they move up for a quarterback, but none of the top 4 there, and I don't think Mac Jones necessarily fits. I think he could be Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think that they are going to look to get better in the middle at the linebacker position, and I think Micah Parsons makes that defense all the much scarier.
Him and Warner would be that would be scary. All right, so I'm up with the Chargers. We talked about it. I think you got to build around Herbert, keep him safe. We talked about Darsal. I actually like Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. He comes right down the street, and I think he's more versatile. You can bump him in the guard.
Tackle.
Yeah, you kind of see what they do in free agency, but for right now, I really like the fit of Vera Tucker there with the Chargers at 13.
All right, so now I am on the board with the Minnesota Vikings at number 14, and this was, to me, I think we're gonna look at the defensive line upgrade there, and I'm gonna go Kwity Paye out of Michigan.
Yeah, he seems like a Minnesota guy.
Yeah,
scout against the run, like a Zimmer guy.
Yeah,
I like that pick. All right, so I'm up with the Patriots. I mean, I talked about it. I got to preach. I got to kind of back up my word. I'm going with Rashad Bateman. I still like this pick at 15.
Over Jalen Waddle?
I picked Waddle with Detroit.
Yes, you did.
I pick Waddle at 7. So I'm going Rashad Bateman at 15. I mean, I think he has a little bit of Justin Jefferson in him. Do I think he would have that output on New England? Of course not. But I mean, nothing wows you, but he's just a really good route runner. He's a really good football player. He doesn't really have any flaws that stick out. So I like Bateman at 15 to New England.
Yeah, it makes. I mean, of course, we know the history with the Patriots wide receivers, so the curse may be there. But I've liked Rashad Bateman for quite some time now. So now I'm on the clock with the Cardinals at number 16. Bateman was in consideration. Kadarius Toney's in consideration. But I really need help at cornerback, and Patrick Surtain is still on the board. So we're going to take Patrick Surtain to replace Patrick Peterson.
Nice pick. Talked about Vegas. We need a lot of juice up front. I'm not in love with the Gregory Rousseau pick. I think he is a little bit rich for them. They need production right away. He's more of a project. This guy's a little bit of a project, but I saw a lot of output at big spots. I'm going with Christian Barmore from Alabama at 17 to Vegas.
Miami, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. All right, we're done. And you wrap it up at 19 with Washington.
This guy fell into my lap at 19. Yeah. We talked about we need a left tackle. I'm going with Darrisaw from Virginia Tech.
Ooh, over the quarterback.
Oh, I mean, for Mac Jones there, I mean, how is it different than Alex Smith on steroids? I guess he's more mobile in the pocket, but like still not a great offensive line. Have one receiver that can count on to consistently separate on a quarterback that doesn't throw down the field that well. I don't know. I would work on building the team around the quarterback and maybe going all in on a quarterback next year. That's just my thinking though.
All right, so that is going to wrap it up for this week. Next week we'll get into the 20s, get into the playoff teams that made early exits, and where things start to get really interesting. Is there's I know we're actually gonna get a little bit later because we're gonna run into the second picks for Jacksonville and the Jets. So we'll end up getting closer to the end of the round, and then the week after we'll wrap up the first round, and then the teams that aren't picking in the first round. Again, make sure you're checking out backsportspage.com for all the great content, especially the scouting reports, mock drafts, all your draft needs coming up at you. Make sure you're following Derek on Twitter at Derek Mountain. I'm at rstern33 at backsportspage on all social media. Derek, let's do this again next week, bud.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Have a great one, everybody.